Japan's devastating surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941, launched the United States into full-blown total war with Japan, Germany, and Italy. Our civilian economy was transformed from civilian to wartime production, it seemed, overnight. Tens of thousands of young men enlisted or were drafted into uniform to fight the war. This left millions of jobs unfilled, and women came to factories all across industry to make guns, planes, ships, trucks, ammunition, and every other conceivable product to win the war. Nearly 19 million women were in America's wartime workforce, 3 million of them for their first time away from home responsibilities. Norman Rockwell's Saturday Evening Post cover featuring Rosie the Riveter was plastered all over the country, honoring women in America's fight.
On the street, in the home, in a crowd or alone, shout wherever you may be. I am an American. I'm proud of my liberty.
And we needed pilots for combat, tens of thousands of them. All of those would be young men, so female pilots jumped in to fill that void. In September 1942, two women's pilot organizations formed separately, the WFTD, Women's Flying Training Detachment, and the WASP, Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron. Well, in August 1943, those two were merged to create the WASP organization, Women's Air Force Service Pilots. General Hap Arnold, Chief of the Air Corps, selected the great female aviator Jackie Cochran to head up the WASPs. 25,000 women applied, 1,074 were accepted. All of them had prior flying experience and pilot's licenses. WASPs flew over 60 million air miles in every type of military aircraft. Our country is in their debt, and today we honor these great patriot aviators. Also welcome, please, gentlemen with me. First, Carol Kane, who is Associate Director of the WASP Museum. Carol, if you would.
Thank you.
And Terry Baker, who's Director of the American Heritage Foundation. Terry. And good morning, everybody. Start us off. It's so great to have you with us.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
Well, Jane, when do you recall as a kid or whenever it was, you first got interested in flying? What was it that triggered this interest in flying?
Well, I think when I saw Lindbergh, he came to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and my mother took me out to the airport, and we saw him there, and then they had a ceremony over at the Bung Park, and we went to see that, and at the time, you know, it probably really impressed me, but I didn't think that much about it afterwards. And then Wrong Way Corrigan came, and we saw him.
Now, explain for those who don't remember or know about Wrong Way Corrigan. Yeah. Tell about him.
Well, I think he was going to try duplicate Lindbergh's flight, but he ended up on the West Coast instead of over in England. So, but he was probably. But then after that, you didn't hear too much about different ones in aviation, especially women. You never heard about any of them.
About what year? Yeah. About what year was this?
That was 1927 that Lindbergh came to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
And then Jacqueline Cochran won the Bendix Air Race in 1938.
Right.
Or 88.
Right.
88, yeah.
So,
yeah.
but at some point, it clicked on you to want to fly.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Well, I really didn't
school or?
Well, I was at junior college in Grand Rapids, and they started the civilian pilot training program, and I happened to be in an engineering drawing class because I was interested in architecture, and I had to take this engineering drawing, and so the instructor came in and announced to the fellows that they were going to have a civilian pilot training program. So afterwards I asked him, I said, can women get into it? And he said, well, I'll let one woman for 10 men. So I said, I want to do that. And so I hadn't really been up in a plane before that. So I didn't know anything about it, but I was interested.
One woman and 10 men.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't hesitate. You blasted forward anyway.
I tried everything.
Now, where did that attitude come from, that you were going to move on your own?
Well, in high school, I was an ROTC sponsor, and I was in the band, and I just liked things that were a little different than women do.
So tell me about the training when you started. You started training, right? You got into the class.
Yes,
How surprised were you when you were accepted, along with the 10 guys?
Well, I had to stretch. I just made the height minimum. And my mother said I was hanging from the door frames to be tall enough. But I got into it, and we had ground school at the college, junior college in Grand Rapids. And we then in the morning, then we went out to the airport and had our flight training. And the first time up, I thought, this is heaven. I love it.
So your first flight, you remember?
I remember.
And what was your reaction to it?
I wanted to keep on. It was just a whole different perspective, looking down on everything, you know.
So what year was this?
1940. You know.
So you start training as a civilian, and what was that training like up to the point you licensed? What was the training?
Well, we had 70 hours of ground school and 35 hours of flight. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Soloed?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What'd that feel like?
I loved it. I just liked everything about flying.
So when did the WASP thing happen? You know, how close after? Now, you got your license then?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You did?
Yeah.
And how long after that did the WASP opportunity arise?
Not until 1942 it was that Jacqueline Cochran went through the records and found all the women pilots, even those that had private license. She was only supposed to check those that had commercial license, which is 200 hours at that time. But she checked everybody's record, and then I got a telegram asking if I was interested. So I replied right away that I was interested, and I was in college, and I flew with the Civil Air Patrol to keep up my time while I was in college. And so as soon as I got that notice, I went and had the physical and was accepted, but then I had to wait for a class opening, and that was November of 43.
Through all these years of your interest in aviation as a female, what was the reaction from your parents and or your friends about you wanting to fly?
Well, my parents were used to me trying things. They were supporting me all the way. I had a brother that was in the Navy and a sister in the Red Cross, and in wartime, everybody was involved in World War II in some way. All the civilians with rationing, it's been different since then. But World War II, everybody was involved, and I wanted to be part of it.
So what was the process? You were selected, right?
Yeah.
You got a telegram, or...
Yeah.
How many people remember what a telegram is? Good. A few of us.
Yeah.
So you got a telegram to report where?
Well, that was to report to whether I was interested. Well, the telegram came from Jacqueline Cochran's office, and I replied to that.
Right.
And then I got the notice to go have my physical at Selfridge Field.
Selfridge, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're accepted to the program.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And once you're accepted,
Then
orders, yeah?
And then I just had to wait for, and I took the train from Grand Rapids to Sweetwater.
All right. Tell me, what is Sweetwater, Texas?
It wasn't much at that time. You got off the train and you walked across the street to the Bluebonnet Hotel and you stayed there overnight. And then they brought the cattle truck out from Avenger Field and took you out to the field, and so you really didn't see Sweetwater.
Well, you missed Sweetwater.
Yeah.
Oh.
We got into town once in a while, but not very often. They kept us busy.
So describe the training. What was the initial, the beginning of that first week of what the experience was like compared to being back home?
Well, living in a room with six, there were 6 of us in one room, and each of us were from a different state. We didn't know each other, and so we had to get acquainted that way. And it didn't take long to get acquainted because we were all interested in flying, and they started us right out with introduction to the field and the facilities there. But then we started right away with our training at ground school and flight training.
So how much military kind of physical training was there? What was that like?
Yeah, we had PT every day and we had drill every day, and we got up to revelry in the morning and no. Is it revelry in the morning?
Yeah.
Taps at night. Yeah.
No, that's right.
Yeah. And and inspections every Saturday. Everything had to be dust-free. They'd take their glove and go over things.
Did they ever drop a quarter on the top of your bunk to see if it bounced?
Yeah, they did that too. You had to have everything. I've learned to make a bed.
Exactly.
But it was a good training. I mean.
So how were you treated by now all male instructors, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, there was one female, but I didn't have her, and she later became a WASP. She was an instructor, but she later became a WASP, and she had to go through the same training.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you were all licensed pilots when you started the program. Yes, So what was your first flight like, and what airplane?
Well, the first flight was in a BT-13, which was a Fairchild, when I got in that with the helmet and the goggles and the jacket and everything, I thought I'm really a pilot now. It was a little different than a Piper Cub.
Right.
Yeah, and that's it. I was just really thrilled with my first ride in that plane. But we just had it for 6 hours, and then they brought the steerman in. And so we had the steerman for the rest of the primary training.
So how many hours, if you recall, did you have in the steerman?
We had 35 hours in the steerman.
Right.
And then we went from the steerman to the AT-6. Our class was the first one to do that. That was sort of an experiment to skip basic training and go to the AT-6. And so we had 35 hours of that, and that was a lot of acrobatics and different things. They wanted us to know how to get the plane under control if it got in an unusual position. Sure. And it's amazing because my husband was a pilot, and in the AT-6 they wouldn't let them do any acrobatics. But with us we had to do everything. And
how did you take to acrobatics after the Piper Cub?
Well, that was a little different, doing the spins and the rolls and everything. But it was, I liked it. I didn't care about flying upside down too much, but I did it all and passed all the tests and there was one woman in my class that loved to do loops, and on cross country she'd look over and see her doing a loop on the cross country, but I didn't try that.
Did you get in trouble for doing loops on a cross country?
I think so.
When did this airplane enter your flying life?
Well, after we went to the AT-6, then we came back to this plane, and we had our instrument training in it. We had the solo in it first, and then we had training in the link trainer, which is a mobile trainer in a room where you have a hood over you, so you get to rely on the instruments and not your feelings, because it's very easy to feel like you're upside down, but you're still right side up.
Get disoriented.
Yeah, vertigo. And so we had a lot of link training, and then we flew this under the hood. We had a hood over us, but we had another pilot with us, and that's why we had to train to fly the plane, so that when we were the pilot and the other person was under the hood, we could take control if they had any problems.
So when somebody was under the hood, in the front seat of the airplane, were instructors, or they were other students like you?
We were in the front seat.
You were in the front seat as well.
Yeah, and they were in the back.
So at what point did you start? You mentioned cross countries.
Yeah.
When did you start doing that?
Well, we did some in every phase. We did cross countries in the instrument phase. At that time, there were just beams that you flew, and you had beams across the country for the airlines, and it had a Morse code signal. We had to take Morse code class too, and we
maybe wait just a second.
No. Yeah, we had taken Morse code, so when we were flying cross country on instruments and flying the beam, one side was an N and the other side an A, so you knew which side of the beam you were on, and you had a navigation map, and you were to get to your destination, you flew the beam, got a radio signal. Yeah.
So when did you complete training? Did you get new wings, or what was the ceremony?
Well, we had a graduation ceremony.
Right. And
Jacqueline Cochran came and presented our wings. General Arnold came to some of the graduations, and it was all the classes marched in formation, and it was a nice ceremony. Yeah.
All in all, how did the men instructors treat you all?
Some of them were a little rough, but the ones I had were very nice.
So after graduation ceremonies, then you're on duty.
Yeah.
Flying. What did you do? What kind of assignments did you have?
Well, I flew home for a week, and then I had to go to Seymour, Indiana, and it was an advanced twin engine school. And I went there to get checked out in multi-engine so that I could go to B-26s for tow target. And while I was at Freeman Field, I worked out of the engineering hangar, and any engine change or any mechanical change on the plane, I took it up for test flights. And so, yeah.
Well, that's what this place is all about, is airplanes.
Yeah, they sound good.
So you were test flying, and for how many months did you actually do this after graduation, fly assignments, and what were they?
Well, it was mostly the test flights, and then I got orders to go to Panama City for B-26s, but I got a notice at the same time that the program was going to be disbanded. So
you got orders to go to a program that was going to be disbanded.
Yes, so I didn't go to Florida. They were closing the field there at Seymour, and I got married, and so then I stayed until they closed the field, and that was they closed the field January of 1943. 44. And the program was disbanded in December of 44.
So you left the military, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how much flying did you do after you left the military?
Not much. I flew some. Well, my husband was the pilot, and when they closed the field, he went to Dodge City, Kansas, and so we went to Dodge City, Kansas, and San Antonio, Texas, and Douglas, Arizona, and back to Indianapolis, Indiana for the first year. It was traveling all over because pilots were not needed anymore. Yeah. And so he was being transferred all over. Then he got orders to go to Japan. And so when he was in Japan, I still kept flying. I went back home and kept flying. But then after he came back, we settled down, had a
So
family.
what'd you instruct? What'd you do when you went back to Michigan? Instruct or?
I just went out and rented a plane. And they weren't accepting women for hardly any jobs. Susie Parrish, was the one that has the air zoo in Kalamazoo. Her uncle owned an airline. He wouldn't even hire her for the airline because they just weren't hiring women at that time.
Yeah.
And if some of the women did keep, had their own planes and kept flying, and others married somebody that had planes and kept flying, but. My husband stayed in the reserve for 26 years, so he kept flying, but I stayed home and took care of the family.
Well, as Connie Boland mentioned earlier, you and all of your colleagues who flew as women in those years set such an incredible example for women today. Connie's, a former Delta captain. She's got over 20,000 hours and flies Mustangs and so forth. But except for you all paving the way, I doubt we'd have made that kind of progress, and that's all thanks to you, Jane Doyle, and all of your colleagues. I mean,
Well, we loved what we were doing. We were helping our country, but we loved what we were doing at the same time.
Exactly.
And there were 38 girls that lost their lives, and there's always been a memory of them. In fact, one girl in my class, it was a week before graduation, that she had a mid-air collision with one of the new trainees that came in. And so it was quite an experience. So,
Carol, you work with these women all the time, at the museum. Tell me about the museum.
Well,
and what's your mission at the museum?
The mission of the WASP Museum, National World War II WASP Museum, is to preserve this wonderful legacy.
And you're at Sweetwater, right?
And we are in Sweetwater. Our museum actually overlooks the runways where these women trained. There is very little left of the original Avenger Field. Like most training bases, they were constructed as temporary bases. They weren't meant to last forever. And the building that our museum is housed in was built in 1929. It was the original Sweetwater Municipal Airport. And then in the late 1930s and 40s, Avenger Field was built to train British pilots and Canadian volunteers under Roosevelt's Lend-Lease program. Then the WASP came into inception, and their program started. The first 4 classes started in Houston at Houston Municipal Terminal, which is now the site of Hobby Airport. And because of congestion and weather, the training facility moved to Sweetwater, and those British and Canadian trainees were moved to Terrell. So West Texas was a hotbed of military training bases in World War II. There was nothing to run into. We had no mountains, no trees, so you could just pretty much fly. And they say if you learn to play golf in West Texas and you learn to fly in West Texas, you can play golf and fly anywhere in the world. So the women were there until the program closed in 1944. But our mission is to preserve the legacy that these women, to their story, they were not deterred. They came from all different backgrounds. They were all different ages. They ranged in age from 18 to 35. But as diverse as this population of women in the WASP program was, they had 2 things in common. They loved to fly and they loved their country. And that's the reason this plane is so very important to us. The dedication that these women had, these volunteers who have restored this plane have shown exactly the same dedication. 9 men spent 5 years of their lives restoring this airplane, and they have turned around and they are gifting it to our museum so that Jane's legacy and all of these other WASP legacies can be seen in the air.
What opportunities do you have to tell this story beyond, for instance, this morning here at Oshkosh?
Well, I'm so lucky because I'm in the museum 5, sometimes 6 days a week. So I get to tell Jane's story almost every single day. Plus, I travel all over the United States, and I do, for groups or for events like this. And in the last don't you think last 5 years, Jane, the interest in the WASP has grown
it has.
exponentially? I mean, people, and I think it's because people my age are looking back thinking, oh my gosh, I wish that I had asked Aunt Jane what she did when she was my age. And we're beginning to remember, don't you think, Terry, we're beginning to remember where we are all of a sudden aware that we need to document these stories before we don't have access to them.
How many of the WASPs are still living and part of your program?
83 WASP, 1,074 WASP graduated at Avenger Field. 83 are still with us. And the Saturday before Memorial Day, our museum has homecoming. When the WASP had their Order of Fifanella, they had annual reunions. But now that their Order of Fifanella has disbanded, the WASP Museum has homecoming every year. And the WASP are able to come back, visit with their friends, see the museum, see the runways where they trained, reconnect, show your family, your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews where you trained. And on May the 27th of this past year, 11 WASP out of the 83 surviving came back to Avenger Field. Jane and her family were part of that wonderful celebration.
Jane, what is that like? What was this like for you in May to come back with your family and introduce in person, you know, your members of your family to other WASPs and to this experience?
Well, I've been doing it now for about 5 years. I started at some of the reunion we had in Dallas, and they brought in some pilots to fly us from a field outside Dallas to Sweetwater. And after that, I thought I have to start going to these every year. So I have four girls, and I've tried to take each one of them there to see what Sweetwater was and to hear the story, and they've all been very interested in it now too. So
what was their reaction when they first get to Sweetwater with you and you start telling stories about what this was all like?
We never heard all of this before because you know, there for so many years the WASPs just went back home and did their normal jobs that they had, and a lot of them were teachers, and everybody got involved in civilian life. And like my girls, they said, we never knew all this about you, but now they're finding out. I said, that's it. The longer I live, the more they find out about me. So.
Terry, your Heritage Foundation, what's your role? What's your mission? Your mission.
Well, to kind of piggyback on what Carol said earlier about preserving the legacy of the WASP through the museum, we are organized to educate people on aspects of aviation that is uniquely American. And the WASP program is truly an American experience that needs to be preserved, honored, and to spread the word. The more people that know what these amazing women did for our country, the better. Okay? So our mission through this airplane, for example, is to honor the legacy of Jane and all of her sister WASP. The museum flying the airplane to Oshkosh and different events, it's a living history example of what these women did for us. And we think it's vitally important to preserve this. It's something that can't be allowed to pass away with time. Everybody needs to know what happened at this time.
And how effective are you now at being able to document all of this? How challenging is that to document this history and get it down in writing, find logs, tell the stories of what happened during those couple of years?
Well, the WASP program in particular was close to home for us because in Minnesota, where I'm from, we had a WASP, Betty Strophus, who everybody knows, and she's been here many times. And she was our inspiration. So we learned a lot about the WASP program directly through Betty Strophus. And two of our principals in the foundation had visited the WASP Museum and noticed that they didn't have any airplanes of their own that the women flew during the war. So we decided that we wanted to take on a project of restoring a BT-13 because we had extensive experience in that airplane before. But we wanted to provide the museum with an airplane that could be a tangible example of the WASP program. So we think we've done a fairly decent job, and we put a lot of effort into the restoration to with a sense of pride and quality workmanship, because we're representing these women. We wanted this to be a shining example of them. So it was a labor of love for our group, and it's all volunteers. Everybody just pitches in and does their best on behalf of the WASP. So
right.
we're very happy.
Well, the lead of the Restorer team, Ingmar, would you raise your hand, please? Ingmar Holm. Can we get a microphone over to Ingmar? Yeah. Oh, you got it. Oh, you're ahead of the game. Ingmar, tell us about the process of this. How complicated was the process of getting the people and making this happen?
Well, I had worked on BTs before, so I had a knowledge of how they go together, but we found a BT on the field that was really in bad shape. So it took a lot of work to get this thing to the condition we wanted in.
How did you come to become a restorer? What's your background that allows you to do this?
Well, I guess as a kid I always wanted to fly. I started flying with the Luscombe right out of high school, and right along I've been working on different airplanes. And I got into a group, we were working on old Warbirds, the BT-13 and Harvard and a few other airplanes. So it's been a labor of love, I guess, all along for me. And we got this group together, and we just went to work on it.
What was the team you got together? Where do you find these people?
Well, I don't know. We were working on a glider before, a CG-4 glider, and people came out to look at that, and we told them we need some help. And we got quite a few people that wanted to volunteer. We got some really nice people that have spent all this time, finished the glider, and then we started on this project. This was a major project to get it done.
And where was this geographically? Where were you doing this?
This is at the Anoka County Airport, which is just north of Minneapolis.
So not far from here.
No, about
and
2 hours away.
How long did it take you?
5 years.
My gosh. And what's the reaction from all of your colleagues when you finish this airplane? What does it mean to all of you to see this plane the way it is now? And you made it this way. So.
Well, yes, we all made it this way. Yes, all of our group are really excited to see it flying. That was the ultimate, to see it go. And yes, we still have the group, and we still want to continue on something else. We are not done.
Terry, do you have another project in mind for these?
We do. We've actually already started on a PT-19, which Jane mentioned that she flew. So that's in the progress, and we just never know. We're open to opportunities, and if something kind of lights a fire within us, we'll pursue it. One other thing I wanted to add, what Ingmar said, our group of volunteers, we estimate that collectively over our group, over the 5-year period, they contributed over 20,000 hours of volunteer time to bring this about. And it has been a labor of love. You know, everybody just believes in the mission and what we wanted to do for the WASP, and whatever needed to be done, how dirty, it didn't matter. Everybody just pitched in, and we have the best group of guys you can possibly imagine to work with. It's just an honor to work with them.
So now that you have this airplane, Carol and Terry, to what extent does this expand on the opportunities you have to continue your mission and get the word out to more people about this WASP experience?
Well, our museum has a Stearman PT-17, we have a PT-19, and this will be our third of the five trainers that there were different models of each of these aircraft at Avenger Field, but those three plus an AT-6, and we have the skeleton of a body that's capable of being restored of a UC-78. So eventually we want to have all five of these different airplanes in our museum that are airworthy, so that we can our museum pilot is also on our board of directors, and he's made it possible for our aircraft to be able to move about the country, so people are able to see them. And it's one thing to look at a photograph of an airplane, but it's another to hear the sound, to see it, to see what you have to go through even to crawl into the cockpit. These women had parachutes, they were crawling up the wing. I mean, they didn't have a step ladder or an escalator. I mean, to see what it took
and
for these
Jane,
women.
who had to hang from a bar
Exactly,
to get
tall enough. Exactly. So when you see people actually interacting in these aircraft, it gives you such a different perspective on what you went through when you were flying in service to our country, and you did it every day, except 3 or 4 times a day.
At that time, but now it's a little problem.
to get up. You don't jump up on the wing anymore?
No. They put a little ladder, and I climb up, and then they push me in.
That brings up a point. That you had a ride recently, right?
Yes,
In the airplane. Describe that experience. What was it like?
Well, once I got in, it was fine. But I had a little problem getting in.
So how was the flight?
It was wonderful. Yeah. We flew all over around Sweetwater, and I was so amazed because at the time when I was at Sweetwater, there were none of these windmills, and it was just bare country, where now it's so much is built up around there, and to see the landscape from a different view, and instead of just watching my instruments and landings and that, it was entirely different.
Did you fly?
I flew just a little bit. I couldn't reach the pedals too well.
Jane was talking about when she comes every year for homecoming, she flies into DFW, and there are a group of volunteers that pick the WASP up as they come in. They're overnighted in private homes, then delivered to us in Sweetwater for homecoming, then taken back and put on their airplanes. It's all, I would imagine it would be, it's sad for us to see you leave Sweetwater. I bet it's really sad for them to see you leave Dallas. And then there are people like Terry and his group. And when you were talking about when one of your principals visited the WASP Museum, his name is Jim Johns, and he brought his wife. And as they're looking around, realizing we did not have a BT-13, Jim looked at his wife as they were going to get in the car, and he goes, this museum needs one of these airplanes that we've been restoring. And he looked at his wife and said, we're going to restore an airplane for them, knowing that he had Terry's support at home. And his quote was, "This one's for the girls." And yes, this one truly is for the girls. It's become our mantra in all of the ups and downs of restoration. Things go real well for a while, and Ingmar can tell that story too. Things that you think it's going to take off the next day, and a month later you're still sitting on the taxiway. But this one truly is for the girls.
When you say for the girls, you're also talking, as we mentioned earlier, about all the young women and women since then, and who now, I mean, here at Oshkosh, with the Young People's Program, I mean, they've, a couple of million flights of young people to inspire both boys and girls, young men and women, to fly. And you're right at the base of this whole program.
And at homecoming, the EAA Young Eagles send their planes from Abilene. Abilene has an EAA chapter. Bill Johnson is one of those pilots. How many? From 9 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is Bill Johnson, who is on our board of directors. Bill is our pilot. We go, it's just Bill, and Bill's the pilot, but he is responsible from the inception of our museum. Bill has been a part of that, invaluable to us. And when the young eagles come, Bill flies with them. And how many young people between the ages of 8 and 17 did you all fly on that Saturday morning?
We'll usually fly 40 or 50 or more each year.
And in our area that's agricultural, mainly agricultural and rural, these pilots bringing these planes are usually the first time these kids have ever been in an airplane.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and they probably won't have the opportunity of being in an airplane again for a long, long time.
Unless, they
Unless
get their
the bug
parents.
bites, exactly,
Yeah.
and the parent will step up, and that's the reason this plane is so important. I mean, it
Right.
generates interest not only in the children, but it generates interest in the parents.
Sure. Bill, how fulfilling experience is this for you?
It's really a tremendous experience, and I so look forward to flying this airplane in Sweetwater. As you can see, it's just a beautiful example, and Terry and Ingemar and their group have done a fabulous job, and the museum is going to be so very proud of it, and I'm going to be honored to fly it, and I hope we fly it a lot.
Good. Well, welcome to Oshkosh. What we're going to do now is, if everybody would stay in the grandstands, we've got microphones for you all to ask questions, and Ingvar and Bill and the team are going to be here with Jane around the airplane to answer your questions about the BT-13 in just a moment. Jane, thank you. It's an honor meeting you. You're awesome.
May I introduce one more person?
Yes, ma'am.
An integral part of our museum is our new director, Ann Hobing, and Ann has been in our museum for the last 3 months. So we're at Ann. I think there's a microphone if you wanted to just say hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. I'll take just a couple seconds, but I just wanted to thank the American Aviation Heritage Foundation for doing this work. Like Carol said, I've only been with the museum just over 3 months, so being here is really wonderful. It's been fabulous to have all the support of volunteers and the generosity of donors, and have wonderful people who are really inspired, like I am, by Jane and the WASP. So thank you very much for being here today, and thanks to Terry and Ingemar and their team.
And ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you to you, Jane, Carol, Terry, everybody. And feel free to ask questions. Ingmar, join us up here if you would. Bill, join us up here around the airplane if you would. This is the man right here, knows
Yes.
every inch of this airplane. So feel free to ask questions, and the mics are out there. Nice to meet you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Connie Bolin again. Ingemar, I want to ask you, this BT-13 is a special airplane. I've only flown a BT-13 once. You fly a T-6 as well. Let's start by telling us the transition between this airplane and the T-6 and how they use this in training.
Well, the BT was the first Warbird that I ever flew, and that was pretty exciting. Then I got into the AT-6, which was also exciting, and also I get involved the air shows with the Japanese Kate. They made that for the Tora Tora movie, which was actually a T-6 and a BT-13 put together, and I flew that a lot of air shows. That was exciting.
Well, Jane, let's go back to you. You flew the BT and the T-6. Is that is correct? Did you have a preference?
Well,
The one you were in?
I like the AG6. It was a little quieter, and it was a little easier to get into too. And I liked the retractable landing gear. And they were both nice airplanes, but as I say, we flew this one mostly for instruments, so I didn't have quite as much experience just like cross country and that by myself in it as I did in the 6th. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of partial to the 6th, so you won't offend me by saying that is great. So, Ingemar, you thought the restoration team thought this airplane would be ready to do this last year, and tell us about some of the struggles that you mentioned earlier, that you think it's ready to fly, and then the next day there's something else that comes up. Tell us a few of your challenges with this airplane.
Okay, well, the first was the airplane when we first got it. It would really look like a pile of junk. So that was the challenge. We had to strip it all down to the basic airframe and start from there. Get that cleaned up, get the tubular part of the airplane bead blasted and cleaned up so we could start painting it and start getting all the other parts. And just getting all the parts together it's a challenge. You know, we have to see if we got the right parts, and the BT also came in different production, used some different parts, so they were not all the same. So we had a challenge to find the right parts to fit on that particular fuselage. So it was not a real smooth operation. It took quite a while to do this.
The engine, this is a Pratt & Whitney?
Yes, the engine is a Pratt & Whitney.
What other aircraft have this type of engine? Is it readily available?
Well, the 450 Pratt & Whitney is in all the Beechcraft twin engine there. So that the engines are available there. And of course, there's a lot of them in the BTs. You know, the years of making BTs, not too many of them flying. So there are a number of the engines around. Of course, the Stearmans used them in their operation for spraying and dusting in the Stearman. So that's there's a lot of them around. Covington does a nice job of working on them.
You want to step up here, Bill, and tell us about your anticipation of flying the BT-13. Have you flown this airplane yet?
No, I don't have any BT time. In fact, I've got a few hundred hours in primary trainers, and I'm looking forward to graduating up to a basic trainer.
Oh, cool. Well,
Yeah.
just like the ladies. Just like the ladies did then, right?
Right.
Jane, you want to give him any pointers?
What? In flying what?
Transitioning from basic into the BT-13.
Yeah. Well, I don't really remember that much about it. I know that's it. We didn't know a lot of things in the AG6, but then coming back to this, we had that link trainer for quite a while, and then we got into the BT-13 and flying, and then we always had someone with us when we were flying because we were under the hood. So I didn't have that much experience with really flying the plane, except that as a co-pilot, while the other one was under the hood, I was able to fly it. So.
Was this a pretty stable airplane in the instrument environment?
It was an easy plane to fly. Right. And I liked flying it, but I still like the AG6.
It was faster.
Yeah,
the T6 was a lot faster. You could pull that gear
well,
up.
and see, we called it the vibrator, too. It makes a lot of noise. I can tell those engines still when I hear them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the airplane is going from here to Texas. Is that correct? In the near future?
We're flying back to Minneapolis with it, and be a couple of weeks probably before we fly down to Texas.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that is.
We have to have time to plan a celebration for this plane to arrive in
Well, absolutely.
Sweetwater.
Well,
Yes,
absolutely.
We do.
Well, I say congratulations to all of you,
Oh, thank you.
to your team that took on this project.
You did a wonderful job on it. It looks beautiful.
I think you you all exemplify what we are in Warbirds of America, to keep them flying. As Carol said earlier, you can see a picture and you can see them sitting in a museum. It's not quite the same as hearing one run or to having the opportunity to get hold of the stick. So, Terry, the group, Bill, Carol,
Thank
you, Jane, very
Thank
much
you.
for being here. Does
Thank
anybody
you.
have a question now? I'm not going to forget you. Okay.
Jane, I'd like to ask if you can remember any experiences during your flying career that really got your heart pumping. Maybe some mechanical issue or something that sticks out in your mind that was a little bit scary.
Well, I don't remember which plane it was that I was flying, but the oil line broke. But it broke just before I came in for a landing, so I really didn't have any problems getting back down. But it was a good thing I didn't have very far to go. And that was really the only mechanical problem that I had. When we were on our 2,000-mile cross country, it was in the springtime, and we flew from Sweetwater to Atlanta, Georgia, and we were flying over the southern states, and there was a lot of flooding in Louisiana. And we had to land at an auxiliary field in Louisiana, and just about maybe 100 miles out from the field, the weather started closing in, and I was sort of flying the treetops between the flooded land below and the clouds above because I hadn't gone on instruments, and that was really the only time they said, "God, you're a co-pilot," and he was with me that day. But I got to the auxiliary field okay, but there were some of them that landed all over different places in there in Louisiana. But those were really the only two experiences that I had where it was a little bit touchy.
Great. Any other questions? Oh, we have one over here, Kyle. Actually, I see a couple of Twin Beach operators out here, so they know how your engines operate.
This question is for Jane. You mentioned that your husband was a pilot. Did you meet him as a civilian or your life as a pilot?
I didn't get what he said.
You mentioned your husband was a pilot.
Yes.
Did you meet him as a civilian in your civilian life or as a pilot?
He was my Czech pilot.
Did you pass on the first ride, Jane?
He was so strict I couldn't stand him. He kept cutting out engines on me all the time because it was in the AT-10, and I'd just get one engine back on and he'd cut out the other one back and forth. And when I came down, I thought, I don't want to ride with him again, but I did. And then we became friends.
I'm glad you asked that question. I like that.
Yeah, and then we were married for 67 years, so it lasted.
Yes, sir, we have one more question here.
Yeah, question about the BT-13. Will it be flown regularly when it's at its new home in Sweetwater?
Yes, it will. It won't be on any strict schedule, but I would hope that we'll fly it weekly or at least 2 or 3 times a month.
Okay, we have a gentleman here. I think this is our last question. Here we go.
Where is he?
Run, Kyle.
Yes, I have a question for Jane. You said your husband was stationed in Japan.
Yes.
Did you go to Japan? Did you live there? And if so, what was your impression of post-war Japan?
I didn't get to Japan. He was sent there just at the close of the war, and he was sent over there as a finance officer. But when he got to the base, the colonel wanted to see him, and he said, "I see you're from Wisconsin," and he said, Cuba City. And the colonel that was the commander of the field was from the same area, and he says, "But how'd you get to be a finance officer? You like to fly, don't you?" And he said, "I sure do." So then he flew from then on. He did reconnaissance flights after the war in Japan, and because he had been an instructor during the war, he didn't have previous overseas time. So I'd just get to the top of the list to go over there, and new people would come in that had previous overseas time. So I never did get to Japan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you for being a part of the Warbirds in Review. This has been terrific, and referencing the young people and bringing them in. I'd like to point it out to all of you that we have added a simulator just as you depart this way. It's in a big white tent there, and it is a P-51 Old Crow simulator, like Bud Anderson's airplane, Redbird simulators, and that is open to the kids. I think we have to fight off the adults, but we want to do that for the young people who can be here. So the simulator's right down here. One more reminder that we do have the souvenir program, some wonderful pictures of all the people who are through here throughout the week, and this is totally separate than the program you might have from EAA, and it truly is a collector's item. I'd like to thank my team of volunteers and all of you once again. Thank you.